Hello everyone, Adam aka CS Radical here, coming at you with another 6 a.m., talk thing. I'm still half awake here. This is the problem with doing these recordings so early in the morning. It's like, I've only been up since 5:15. The only reason that I'm not still barely functional is because at least I had McDonald's on the way here and got a Coke, so at least I got something in my system. So, when it came to things I wanted to talk about, outside of doing reviews, because obviously the first video I've done since my channel update was a Black Panther review, I wanted to talk about so many different things. And originally on my blog page, I tried to do everything, and I limited myself to anime and gaming because I thought it was too much. Now that I'm kind of looking at the channel as a whole as more of a hobby rather than something I'm trying to be quote-unquote famous doing, it's at that point that I feel like it's better off that I just talk about whatever I want. So, as a heads up, there's going to be some things that, you will probably not be that interested in. Maybe, because I have a finger in every pie possible when it comes to being a nerd. I'm an otaku. I'm a gamer. I'm a sports guy. I love professional wrestling. There's so many things that I'm into. And I don't want to limit myself to talking about a few things, and I don't want to have to go through the trouble of making 3 or 4 different channels just to be able to fit all these things in. So, if you're one of those people that's like, ugh, I can't stand it when this guy that I follow starts, doing a video about anime because all I care about is the stuff he talks about video games. I'm sorry, but you can just not click on his video, his or her video. So that's a little thing that always bothers me. Because it's not like I watch every single video that a content creator makes. There are videos from everybody that I subscribe to that I still skip. Because if it doesn't interest me, it doesn't interest me. But that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in the creator anymore. So I digress. What I wanted to talk about today is anime related. I had a whole myriad of choices of things I could have talked about. And this is the first one that comes to mind that has really become very, let's just say, passionate with me. There's endless things for me to talk about. And obviously, if you kept an eye on my Twitter page, hell, if you're even on my Gab page now, you know that, if I'm not talking about, social justice crap, politically correct crap, and all this other shit, that basically the other half of that is just me talking about anime and ecchi and all that stuff. So I wanted to talk about that as a whole, because I still believe that here we are in 2018 and ecchi is still looked at like this disgusting art form, like it's looked at as, this potentially dangerous art form in a way, because there are still those people that think that, watching certain shows makes you suddenly look at women in a different light, make you think about sex in a different light, and, this is one of those things where it's like, it bothers the crap out of me because I don't see where the basis is, in the same way that people try to link video games to violence, which is another thing I need to talk about because that's still becoming a thing. So, anyway. I've been watching anime on and off probably since high school, and it's no surprise that when you are a teenager going through puberty, that obviously things become quite one-directional, especially as a boy. You're constantly looking at that new desire that you have. At 13, I suddenly had an interest in women that I never had before. I never looked at a girl when I was in gym class and she'd be wearing a t-shirt and shorts and never thought anything of it. And then once I hit grade 7 and I'm 13 and I'm looking at that same girl in that same red shirt and black shorts and be like, holy crap. And that hasn't changed. I'm still, here I am at 30 now. I just turned 30 just over a week ago. And, it really hasn't changed in the sense of I'm still having that same interest of going around, and now I play recreational league sports, and I'm still looking at various girls that I play against and just going wow, that girl is super attractive. That, it's something that never really changes, I believe. And, when it came to anime, it was no different because, once I started seeing certain shows, I started looking at things differently. Obviously, the first show that I noticed A certain girl was Dragon Ball Z. And most of you are probably thinking, oh, it's probably like Bulma or Android 18. No, you know who the first one it really was? It was Videl. And I think obviously the haircut had a lot to do with it. But, you know, that was the first time that I really like noticed a female character. And then I started getting into other shows like FLCL, Fooly Cooly. Started paying attention to Mimimi. Haruko didn't do anything for me then. Obviously, it's a different story now. I think she's super attractive. I'm trying to think what other shows were like that. I think the first, like, really, like, pure ecchi show that I got into, or at least knew of, was Ikitusen, or Battle Vixens. And that, for obvious reasons, it didn't hide that one fucking bit. So, you know, going through high school, that's kind of where I lean. And then there was the stage where I went to college, and you know, I was heavily involved in video games and stuff that realistically, like, in terms of anime, I wasn't watching at all anymore. And then by the time I got to, I don't know, like, let's say like 23, 24, you know, I started paying attention to anime a little bit again. And that was due to a lot of harems. And that's when I started finding my stride because, you know, and I have no problem admitting this. You know, I'm a guy who loves harems. I'm a huge harem anime guy, and it doesn't even necessarily have to do with all the sex in it. Obviously, it's a part of it, but I also find that harems, at least for me personally, they're always the funnier shows I can get to, and they're also the ones that I can turn my brain off. I'm not too big with a lot of super serious anime. Like, my list this season is maybe 3, I think, that I could take seriously, because I got Garo, I got Hakata, and I have Yorimoi, and I think that's all of them. I don't think there's one I'm missing. But I mean, even then, like, generally speaking, over half of the anime I watch every season is always going to be comedy. And a lot of them just end up being harems on the basis of that's just what I end up finding funny. You know, obviously there are pure comedy shows that don't need the harem setting for things, but it's always something that's kind of fitting me. And the show that really kickstarted that was Infinite Stratos when I first watched that. And a lot of people have really shit on that show. And I don't know what it is about that show, but everything about it ended up being so perfect for me. And this is me talking about the English dub, by the way. I actually don't watch the Japanese sub on that one. That's actually one of the very few shows that I will watch the dub over it. Because at least the dub, you know, it might be really bad accents, but at least the voice actresses actually try to differentiate between the characters. So if it's the British girl, she actually has a British accent. If it's the German girl, she has a German accent. If it's the French girl, she has a French accent. If it's the Chinese girl, she speaks perfect English. So that's how English dubs work. But anyway, shows like that really brought an interest to me when it came to harems. And, you know, a lot of people feel like, you know, as an anime fan, I should be ashamed that that's where a lot of my love goes to. And I don't feel any sort of desire to say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I have no reason to really, you know, feel ashamed of myself for liking these kinds of shows. Because again, like we can all say with, you know, the violence in video games bullshit, you know, I think the majority of us, and I mean by majority, I mean like 99.9% of us, can look at a show like Infinite Stratos, can look at a show like Ikitusen, can look like a show at High School DxD, although High School DxD is absolutely fucking garbage. We can look at shows like that and understand the difference between fantasy and reality, and I don't need someone to tell me that, you know, oh, you know, that's going to lead to, you know, you looking differently at women, and it's like, where are you getting this from? Like, is this just your personal opinion? Because I can tell you from experience that I haven't really changed my perspective of women just because I suddenly started watching anime where tits were fucking thrown around like it was, you know, nothing. You know, it's not like I've had like a sex addiction. It's not like I've gone out and tried to do anything mischievous when it came to that. Like, you know, most of us are pretty level-headed, and don't confuse us with the people that go and do these really fucking horrible things. It's the same thing that I don't go and compare video games or rap music or anything as something contributing to what is essentially a crazy person and a criminal. You know, we have to start putting the responsibility on individuals and not trying to figure out reasons that contributed to it. At the end of the day, the person is at fault. Even if Doom contributed to people shooting up schools back in the 90s. Doom is not responsible. Doom is a fucking... It's a non-existent piece of fiction. Like, where do you get the idea that that can suddenly be put with any responsibility for something that is a terrible and a horrific act? At the end of the day, it goes on the person. It always should go on the person. So there's that. When it comes to harems, moving on, there is a sense of over-exaggeration, and there is a sense that, they may try to lean a little too far in the direction of trying to please the blanket statement of what a guy is into. Like, for example, there's something that I guess I'm not so big on that, it's kind of a pun intended when I get to it, compared to other guys where I'm not too big on characters that have, like, giant breasts. Like, when it comes to anything above D cups, like, it's really hard for me to have any interest in that character because, again, it's like, it's so disproportionate and unrealistic to me. Like, I've made the joke before that I have no interest in something that I can't cup my hand over. It's kind of not that interesting at that point. Like, you see porn stars in real life and they have, like, the giant F cup, like, fucking fake tits, and you're thinking, what's even the point at that? Like, that's what I think. It's like, what's even the point now? And also, I find that generally speaking, a lot of anime characters that do have that size, just, they end up not being interesting to begin with, so it's like they're relying on drawing the character like this just to get any sort of attention. There are very few characters that with a large bust size that really got my attention. The only one I can think of off the top of my head right now, at least in terms of a harem anime, is Claire from 100. And that was a show that defied so many expectations for me because I thought it was just going to be a shitty Infinite Stratos ripoff. And it actually... It's not... I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a great anime, but for a harem anime, it's a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. Because when I watch harems, generally speaking, when I take on new harems every season, I go in with the understanding that I'm going to get one of two options. I'm either going to get one that's actually good, or I'm going to get one that's just fucking terrible. There's really no in between. I find that there's no gray area in harems. There's either ones that just do its job properly and don't take itself too seriously, and then there's ones that try to put some serious, like, crazy good, like, they're trying to be, like, artistic with their storytelling, and they're trying to relay a message, and it's like, you're a harem anime, you don't really have the room for a message. You're still too busy trying to fit in all the jokes, all the ecchi, all this other stuff. You don't have time to put in a real meaningful story. Like, I don't like Infinite Stratos as one of my favorite anime of all time, and certainly my most favorite harem anime. I don't like it because of some really good storytelling. I don't like it because... it relays a message that's so important and resounding within me. No, I like it because pretty much every character except for Lin, the Chinese girl, are fucking amazing characters. I love them all. The pseudo-mech part of the anime, it actually looks really good. The battles are pretty good looking, and it is some of the best ecchi that I've seen in harem anime. It's some of my favorite stuff. So, that's the thing. Like, I find that harems, when they try to get a little too cute, it gets, it's a little underwhelming. Like, it stops being interesting. Some of my favorites don't go around and try to have 4, like, crazy, stupid, large-breasted women that are just fighting for. Like, you have to have a balance. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying we need to show, like the Rio's work is never done, where basically every character except for Ginko that's really fighting for Yaichi's love needs to be under the age of 10. That's a different story. That's a whole nother can of worms that I can open another day. But the idea that, because people seem to have this problem because they're like, oh, they're all underage girls. I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, most of the girls in harem animes tend to be between the ages of 13 and 18. And yeah, I get that in a lot of countries, age of consent's a thing, but let's also remember that this is fiction, and the characters, generally speaking, in these harems are also, or the main character in these harems is also around the same age. Like, usually the main character is like 15, 16 as well, just like the rest of the girls are. So it's another thing if the main character is 35 and everybody else in that show is 14, 15, 16. That's a little different, but considering most harem animes, the protagonist is always the same age, or at least in the same age range as all the characters, all the girls that he's fighting for. And occasionally there are, in the case of like a 16-year-old guy, there is like a girl in her 20s or maybe even older that's trying to go after him too. That's always a possibility. But, you know, I don't see the problem because, again, it's fiction. It's not real. Like, we're not looking at this as like some realistic representation of what goes on in real life. Like, let's be honest, unless you're the most popular guy in school, there's no harem of 5+ 15-year-old girls trying to suck your dick every 5 seconds. So the idea that watching a harem anime is going to make you suddenly become this extremely misogynistic, sexist, and, you know, potential rapist kind of guy is so absurd. Okay, so I'm trying to think where I want to go next with this, because I have a couple more options I can go through. I guess I can say that the kinds of ecchi that we see in it, and I've written an article about this before, where, you know, obviously me being bisexual now, you know, I've recently, I'd say, what, 2-3 years ago, I kind of really opened myself up to being bi-curious, and now I am 100% bisexual, and I have no problem saying that. The change that I have seen, or the change that that in my head has gone through watching harem anime has become a lot different. Not in the sense of, it's not like I have any problems with, you know, the amount of ecchi that women go through, but now it's become something a little different, where I look at what they do and I look at how they do it. And what bothers me now is I think a lot of shows go to the absurd length to get just the most, like, sexualized shots they can. You know, as a guy who enjoys, you know, the girl being walked into while she's changing, or when she's showering, or, you know, you're getting your hot springs moments, your swimsuit episodes and all that stuff is good. The stuff that I really don't like is when, you know, the camera is constantly under her skirts, so that, you know, you're making sure that you're always getting some butt shots in there. I think when you use the camera angles to make ecchi content for your show, that's when you're not doing it right. I feel like ecchi should be circumstantial. It should be something that comes off as something that you could actually believe seeing. Like, if, you know, people comment all the time, oh, you know, they always have to have girls showering or bathing. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's because girls do shower and bathe. Like, obviously, you know, we want to keep ourselves clean. We want to look good. So, I mean, especially if we're talking a harem anime where the girl's trying to get a guy's attention, she certainly isn't going to get that by not bathing, smelling like shit, and looking, you know, like she just gone through a dust pile. You know, I don't have a problem with that. Now, on the flip side, and this isn't even necessarily coming from a place of me being bi, it comes from a place of just, okay, but why not this too? And that's, if we're going to show endless streams of girls showering, girls changing their clothes, like undressing, all that jazz, why is there never, almost in any harem anime, the guy doing the same thing? And I don't give a shit if your immediate response is, well, these things are made purely for guys. I don't think that that's necessarily an excuse, because and I've said this so many times, because, you know, when you get guys that are like, oh, I don't want to see, like, some naked dude in this thing, like, all I want to, like, I'm only here for the tits. Obviously, like, that's an exaggeration, but, like, that's kind of the opinion some people hold. To which I say, okay, motherfucker, when you watch porn or when you watch hentai, what do you think you're watching when the girl's getting fucked? You're watching a naked dude. And you know what? Especially in hentai, a lot of those guys are not attractive. You know, you get a lot of fucking anime, and this is the thing that drives me nuts about hentai. This fucking weird thing that we go on where rape is a normal, like, this is the conversation I'll be happy to have in another video where I take shots at hentai and that kind of stuff, because they seem to have this ridiculous love for rape and for assault and for, like, ugly fucking dudes, you know, suddenly getting laid. And no offense, but, you know, I don't want to see any of that. And if I'm, even when I was straight, you know, if I want to see a girl getting fucked in a hentai anime, I at least want the guy to look, you know, half decent too. I don't want some fucking fat ass. who's like 300 pounds with a tiny dick fucking screwing this girl. Like, it's not interesting. And the same goes for real porn. It's like people who are like, oh, no, I'm not gay. I'm like, look, you can take the statement however you want. I think we're all at some point a percentage bisexual, and that bisexual is really small. But the reason that I say we have to be part bisexual is because if we really didn't have any sort of idea of wanting to see a man naked, it's like we wouldn't watch porn then, because what do you think we watch? I mean, I can, obviously a lot of us can shut off our brain and just not really pay attention to the fact that there's, this naked guy with his asshole like in the camera because you can see the girl riding him. I don't think about that heavily, but at the end of the day, it's like you're still watching some other guy's dick, Your eye is still on the dick because you're seeing the dick go in her. So when it comes to anime, going back to that, that's always been my question, is why don't we see a lot of harem animes where the guy is changing, where the guy is showering? Like, there is a show that I always go back to that really shocked me, not in like a annoying or an upsetting way, in like a surprising way, where not only it was really good, the Phantasy Star 2 online anime was far better than I ever gave it any chance to be. I thought, okay, it's some shitty game tie-in anime. It actually ended up being a lot better. I'm not saying it's perfect, but man, for what anybody would have thought that anime was going to be, it's so much better. But one of the biggest things is that, and I can't remember the name of the guy. I know the name of the girl that eventually, the blonde girl, Aika, who eventually, joins him. And she gets her shots in too. But before that, it's this hot spring meeting between the main character and I think the others, like the other main girl's alternate costume. Like, we all think, oh, we're going to get to see her in the hot spring, in her true form. We're like, no, it's going to be her male avatar that she carries on the side. And with the main character, generally when you see a guy in a hot spring, especially when it comes to harem anime, the best you ever get is like basically just below his chest. Like, if you see nipple, that's like an amazing accomplishment from anime when it comes to guys. In this one, you straight up get everything. You get full on boy butt in that show. And I was shocked by that because I sat there thinking, holy crap, somebody actually bothered to do it. And I haven't seen much of it since. Like, obviously, the recent A Sister's All You Need actually did it, and did it quite prominently. It's a very uncommon thing. If you want to see some boy button shows, you really have to go to, like, shows that are more designed for women. Show that are more designed to be a boy love kind of show. And I think with harems, like, I think we need to move past the idea that, it should only be girls that are parading around in their underwear. I'm not saying that we need like scenes where a guy is literally walking around in fucking briefs for like 5 minutes straight, but I'm saying if you're going to have every girl under the sun taking a shower, the guy better at least be taking one too, because otherwise we're just going to assume he smells like shit. And the same goes to swimsuits, the same goes for hot spring scenes, it goes for everything. Like, if you're going to do it for the girls, do it for the guy too. And I'm not saying that means for a swimsuit episode the guy has to be walking around in a Speedo, but for God's sakes, like, at the very least it'd be nice to see once in a while the main character not just wearing like the most like baggy board shorts where there's just nothing. Like, at least have him wear like a tighter fitting pair of like shorter shorts. Like, at least make that attempt. Especially when you draw like these like very shy, introverted, like almost like lone wolf kind of guys that, have that loser nerdy look to them, and they end up like, you end up getting the swimsuit episode and they look like they've been hitting the gym all this time. It's like, where the fuck is this coming from? So, and I think, that'll be the last thing I make a point on here is when it comes to swimsuit episodes, when it comes to underwear, when it comes to all that stuff, when it comes to the female characters. I obviously have no problem with swimsuit episodes. I have no problem with ecchi scenes where the girls are undressing, walking around in their underwear, all that stuff. The problem that I have sometimes with shows is that the clothes do not match the personality. you get a lot of characters in harem anime that are extremely shy, that are extremely, like, you get the character that's like the goody two-shoes, I just want senpai to notice me, and she's all fidgety and looking really, like, cute, shy, and all that jazz. She looks like a very conservative, like, girl. Like, she holds everything close to her. She's not trying to be very flashy. And then swimsuit episode rolls around and she's wearing possibly the skimpiest bikini out of all the girls, except for the one with giant tits who basically wears, strings. One of the examples that I always point out is, and you thought there was never a girl online. And the reason I point that one out is because when you look at the main character of Akko, and she is a girl who is like the definition of neat. She has no interest in the outside world. She has no interest in normies, quote unquote. And yet, swimsuit episode rolls around, and she's in a super flashy, frilly bikini with her butt hanging out and all that jazz. And it's like, I get that, this is what you're trying to do. And maybe, you can put some reasoning behind it, like, oh, she's just really trying to court the main character. But at the same time, she doesn't really intend to do that. Like, sure, she's had the door opened on her once when she was naked by the main character. But, I mean, that's circumstantial. Again, that's when I find that stuff to be legitimate, because that's circumstantial. But she, by choice now, is wearing this extremely skimpy attire, whereas I would expect her to be wearing, at worst, that same top, but swim shorts. This is the thing that I always have a problem with when it comes to swimsuit episodes. It's probably the only problem I have with it, is that it just doesn't match. Like, I don't expect the tomboy character in a show to go around in, like, a thong bikini. I don't expect the really sexy girl to go around in a conservative one piece, or hell, even further than that, the one piece with a skirt. So you don't even see bum. Or hell, like, just not even wearing just wearing swim shorts. I expect the tomboy to be in a bikini top and shorts. I expect the conservative girl to be in, like, a one piece, So when you have characters that it just doesn't match them, like, that's when it does, it doesn't fit, and it does bug me a little bit, because I do have the expectation that if you're going to write, and this goes for anything in harem anime, whether it's, all the undressing scenes and all the walking in on a girl changing stuff and the showers and the hot springs, I expect if you're ever going to write an ecchi scene in something, and if you're going to write anything ecchi related in a harem anime or an anime in general, I expect you to have at least a good reason as to why it's happening. Obviously, there's a little bit of weird stuff, like when you have the classic, the girl and the guy run into each other, and they're both facing each other, and then somehow the girl does a fucking half cartwheel and ends up with her fucking crotch in the guy's face, like weird shit like that. That's when I'm like, dude, no, that doesn't even make any fucking sense. Like, that makes no logical sense. Like, science doesn't support that. I don't know where you're getting that from. So that's where my problem lies. I don't really care about, the girl falling on the guy straight up and her skirt's running up a bit and he can see, like, a little bit of butt. That's different. But at the end of the day, if you're going to write this stuff in, make sense. Give a good reason for it. One of my favorite scenes is the main character, Ichika in Infinite Stratos, walking in on Charlotte when she's in the shower, realizing for the first time that Charles is not a Charles, it is a Charlotte. So, and it's a classic thing. They're both living together because Charlotte has been masquerading as a guy to get closer to Ichika, because they're trying to get the technology that he uses for his pseudo-mech in the show. And so they're both living together. The only two guys in this all-girl academy. Go figure. That's a basic harem thing. And they've been living together for a while now. And then usually Charles will leave early so that way she can... Charlotte, I should say, because we're already pulling the curtain up on this. Charlotte will always usually leave early for something, so that way she has time to go shower. That way she is able to, be able to at least be a girl in her own room for the few minutes before Ichika shows up. The problem is he shows up early and also notices that the soap was out, so he had a new bottle of soap, and he went to go give it to him, and that's when he opened the door and realized, oh crap, those are some big boobs for a guy. So that made sense, and it worked really well because it was a good reveal. The quality of the art was actually really good on that. And at the end of the day, that's a big part of it for me. It's the quality. So, I feel like there's this really bad stigma towards harem, and I get why people would go into this direction, but at the same time, it's like, dude, like, I don't play Grand Theft Auto and suddenly get the itch to want to beat somebody's face in with a baseball bat. I don't play, NHL or NBA Live or any other sports game and all of a sudden believe that I have the opportunity to be a superstar in any league. I don't get the sense of any of that. So what makes people think that, harem anime is going to make me suddenly just want to go and peek in girls' change rooms and try to feel a girl up? And I don't understand the train of thought that leads to going so far in that direction. I've been watching harems probably for a total of 10 years, on and off. And I've seen a lot of good, I've seen a lot of bad. And obviously, I've changed my perceptions over time. Obviously, a lot of it being because, my interests in a sexual nature, I should say, have changed dramatically in the last couple of years, to the point that, I legitimately it's not like, even when I was straight, I had no problem if a guy was naked in an anime, and now it's to the point that now I happily welcome it because now I have something else I can look at as well. So it doesn't bother me in any sense that harems exist. The only problem that I really have is that I feel like there needs to be more for the guy equation when it comes to them being in a harem anime. I'm not saying we need reverse harems up the wazoo now. I'm saying that if we have harems and we have a couple of guys in the show, there's no reason that they shouldn't be a little bit sexualized as well. Because that's the thing that I've said for the longest time. I don't want to see sexual content in gaming, anime, all that jazz to be censored. I just want it to be more even. If we're going to have 5+ girls parading around in their underwear for half of the show, I'd at least expect the guys to have to pull their weight a little bit too. I want to see guys having their shirts off at times. I want to see them in the shower. I want to see some boy butt too. And not even necessarily because, I need some jack-off material. I just think it's fair. At the end of the day, that's all I want, is things to be equal. Now, I know in a harem anime, obviously, there's a lot more girls than guys, so we're never going to get it to be equal. But if, at the very least, if it's one guy, one main character, and 5 girls, at the very least, if you're going to have the girls showering and taking baths together and comparing breast size and grabbing each other's tits left and right, at the very least have the decency to at least show that you're not just skewing everything in one direction, and have the guy at least in the shower himself, or at least getting out of the hot spring or the bathtub and getting a little bit of boy button there. That's all I'm asking. Because that's only fair. Because, yeah, I can understand if I'm a straight girl looking at a harem anime being like, well, this is bullshit. Like, it's literally just girls parading around naked. Like, this isn't really... there aren't that many shows where it's guys doing that. Like, I've watched a couple of shows that are centered around an all-male cast, and it's not like that's something that happens a lot either. So, yeah, I don't know if I really have much else to say on that. And also, I have about a couple of minutes before I have to start work, so I should probably wrap this up. So thanks for listening, guys, and I want to hear your thoughts on that as well, because, obviously, especially you out there that are here from the blog that pay attention to my anime stuff, anybody who's really got that interest in anime, I'd love to know what your thoughts on harems are as a whole, because, I love them, and I will continue to love them, and I feel like there are some flaws, and I don't know if you agree with the flaws that I've pointed out. Obviously, there's just the idea that some harem animes are just garbage and poorly written. That's a whole nother can of worms. But at least in terms of the sexual content, I think that's where things could be balanced out a little bit more. So, thanks for listening, guys. Love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you on the next